Welcome into episode number 16 of the Boys Collective right here on 105 through the Fan here on YouTube. My name is Kevin Gray alongside Super Bowl winning scout and 1/4 of the G-Bag Nation, Bryan Broaddus. Bryan, good to see you on this Cowboys victory Monday after a dominant win over the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, KG, thank you very much. Great to be with you. Nothing better than a game at home at noon and you get a victory. So a lot of positive things heading that way. But yeah, it's amazing how different a week can feel about a football team and maybe the attitude of a football team. And maybe those things that we talked about during the week leading up to this game, the things that they got exposed on offensively and some of the things defensively, that they were able to correct. So, great victory against a team that had a lot to play for. Atlanta was playing for their own playoff positioning and trying to, get their record above 500, and, they weren't able to do that. So the Cowboys, from the jump, they took the ball, went and did what they had to do, and really never looked back from that point.
You can find Bryan on Twitter at Bryan Broaddus. You can find myself on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to subscribe to 105 through the Fan here on YouTube and also all our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 1053 the Fan. That jumps us into our Cowboys recap. The Dallas Cowboys 40-point victory on Sunday is the 9th largest margin of victory in franchise history. The last time the Cowboys beat its opponent by at least 40 points was when they beat the Arizona Cardinals 48-7 back in the year 2000. That is how long it's been.
I was working in scouting at that time for the Cowboys. So that was a happy day for us right there. Yeah.
Back on October 22nd, 2000 is when the Cowboys beat the Arizona Cardinals by 41 points that day. The Cowboys scored 36 unanswered points in this game to get the 43-3 win over the Atlanta Falcons. Dak Prescott, 24-31. 296 yards, 3 total touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, 6 catches, 94 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott had 2 touchdowns on the ground. The Cowboys held the Atlanta Falcons to 77 total yards in the first half alone. A dominant effort punctuated by a blocked punt by Dorrance Armstrong, who we'll touch on throughout the show today, but allowed Nahshon Wright to recover it in the end zone for a touchdown. Bryan, it felt like everything that went wrong on last Sunday against the Denver Broncos was flipped completely on its head and went exactly the way the Cowboys thought it would go against the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday.
Yeah, it was very, very clear that, again, the Cowboys win the toss, they take the football, they had a plan for what they wanted to do. And, it really it was executed very well. Atlanta in talking to their scouts, and matter of fact, I was sitting with a few of them during the game. They were up there next to me, and we were going back and forth, and they were kind of trying to fill me in on things that they were looking for in this game. And I was kind of saying, "Oh, this is what I thought Dallas might try and counter." And yeah, they were very, very concerned about matching up on the outside. They knew with A.J. Terrell, they had a pretty good corner, but other than that, they were really, really nervous about their ability to cover the Cowboys in the secondary. And then they, especially with Michael Gallup being back in the mix, that was something that was a big concern. They were worried at nickel. They were worried with Fabian Moreau on the outside. And that's really kind of where it came down to. The aggressiveness of Mike McCarthy going for it on 4th down. I mean, your 2 4th down plays that you had in this game were chunk plays. It wasn't like run it and get the 1st down and then, you go on to fight another day. No, it was go for the throat type plays. And so they had a mindset that they wanted to be aggressive. They had a mindset how they wanted to attack the Falcons. And the Falcons really didn't have a great answer for how to handle the Cowboys overall, much like a lot of teams have had the same problems this year, with, again, the exception of what we saw with the Denver Broncos last week.
The Dallas Cowboys took the opening drive. They won the coin toss, said we're going to go on offense first. They go 8 plays, 73 yards in 3 minutes and 18 seconds. CeeDee Lamb gets a 13-yard touchdown pass from Dak Prescott that really set the tone for the game and how the Cowboys felt that they were going to, I felt, attack the Falcons all day long and be the ones to punch them in the mouth versus being the ones that got punched first. And I thought that was a theme throughout the game against the Falcons. I think one of the turning points in the game for me, so the Cowboys find themselves up 7-3. The Falcons on their second drive, they decide after 3 consecutive pass breakups by Chauncey Golston and then two.
The Golston tip was huge too,
yes.
by the way, in that sequence of you're about to talk about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Golston had the first pass breakup, and then Jordan Lewis breaks it up again on 3rd and 7. Arthur Smith and company decide to go for it on 4th and 7 instead of taking what would have been a 49-yard field goal with one of the better kickers, in the NFL. They don't get it. Jordan Lewis gets a second consecutive pass breakup. And then from there, it was off to the races for the Cowboys. They score 36 unanswered points from there. And Jordan Lewis, during that sequence alone, I thought really set the tone for him and what kind of day that he was going to have. Jordan Lewis really flipped the quote-unquote momentum of the game, if you will, in that sequence. And the Cowboys did not look back from there from that point on.
The one thing that we've learned about Jordan Lewis over the years, and maybe we don't give him nearly enough credit for how competitive he is, and he can draw those funky, weird assignments where it's like, oh, go take Alvin Kamara. Oh, go take Pitts. Go take. He's a guy that is not afraid, where most people don't want. Defensive backs don't want to have to deal, and they're like, a lot of guys have egos and they want to, they believe, I'm confident. Jordan Lewis is confident. Jordan Lewis is a confident football player. And so when you give him those kind of weird, strange assignments, and playing slot corner is not easy in the National Football League. Those guys on the outside, Brown and Diggs, they have the sideline to work with. They could use the sideline as an extra defender and force guys wide. And when you play that slot corner, you've got to carry the whole field, and that's where Jordan Lewis has done a really good job. But it's one of those things, you give him the weirder assignments, he is going to find a way to be successful with those guys that are mismatched players. I initially thought that they were going to run Diggs at Pitts, and it did get that way. It happened on the first, Pitts had a chunk play on that first possession when coverage got bumped, and it ended up Diggs had to carry Pitts inside, and he just never was with him. It's like the eyes were not where they needed to be. And then from that point on, it's like, okay, here we are. This is what we're doing. Lewis, you carry, you stay outside, and we're going to kind of keep it that way. So really good adjustment by Dan Quinn. Joe Witt, Al Harris, those guys in the secondary to kind of bump the coverage around the way they needed to.
Not to be lost on this game, you mentioned Dan Quinn. This was the Dan Quinn revenge game, if you will. He not only was able to help his defense hold the Atlanta Falcons to 3 points, he did receive the game ball after the game, and I thought it was a pretty cool moment with Mike McCarthy and his team handing that game ball to Dan Quinn, of course, who used to be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, made a Super Bowl appearance with that team. We all know what happened that day with Tom Brady and the Patriots. But nonetheless, the Cowboys were able to defensively, they were able to get just enough pressure with Dorrance Armstrong, who had himself a heck of a day. Micah Parsons also got into the act with a sack. What did you think about the overall game plan of the Cowboys defensively and how they attacked the Atlanta Falcons and what they were able to do in holding them to just 77 yards in the first half alone?
Yeah, KG, I can be real honest with you on this. When Cordell Patterson had a 14-yard run early in that game, I'm like, oh, no. Let's not see this repeat of what happened in Denver. But your offense was able to kind of, like you said, you get the stop, you get the field goal at 7-3, you go down and score. And now you're going to try. Atlanta's like, okay, we're going to token run. We're going to try to run. We're not having any success. And then it turns into throwing the ball. That's what a lead does for this Cowboys defense. It takes teams out of their mode. Again, sitting with those Falcon scouts, when it went to 14-3, one of them leaned over to me and says, we're in trouble now. And then it got to 21. And then got to 21-3, and it was just from that point on, they were struggling bad to even get off the field. But the Cowboys defensively, I think they benefit so much from the Cowboys' ability to offense to score and to hold the football. First and second down, they're churning out these first downs. They're keeping things going. Defense is standing over there off the side. Matt Ryan last week lit up the Saints. 11 yards of completion. Yesterday, I think he had 9 completions total for 21 attempts. It's a terrible day for Matt Ryan. I mean, Matt Ryan usually plays really well against the Cowboys. So, yeah, I mean, the game plan I thought was really good. The pressure, we were talking about this. It was going to be, if you're looking for dark horse players or players that have to step up, it was going to be Dorrance Armstrong. Once we learned about the Randy Gregory injury, it's like, okay, who's going to step up? Parsons is going to play well. Curse is going to play well. Who else is going to step up and help? And, I basically yesterday, our pregame show called Dorrance Armstrong out. I said, listen, you have got to go be a difference maker today. You and Basham and whoever else plays defensive end today have got to be difference makers. And sure enough, they were. Those guys were making plays at the point of attack. You were getting pressure, not to mention the really good design on the block punt to get him home. When, as a former long snapper myself, if you ask the long snapper to have to block a twist stunt up front, that's difficult. And they took advantage of, they knew the snapper had to block. And once he couldn't get that block, Armstrong was in on Colquitt, and boom, that's what but see, this is what you got to have from Dorrance Armstrong, but you need it every week. Dorrance Armstrong doesn't need to have a big game ball type game and then disappear the next 3 weeks. He needs to find a way to get to the play continually to play to the ability that he shows occasionally. There's times where he's flashed. Hell, in the preseason training camp. I mean, Dorrance Armstrong was a factor. He has a game, and then he goes away for like 3 or 4 games. Maybe this is that one time. I'd like to believe maybe this is the time you turn the corner. But man, with Randy Gregory being out, those ends have got to play like they did yesterday.
Yeah, the consistency from Armstrong is going to have to be there for the next few games with the injuries that this Cowboys team is still dealing with. Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence still a few weeks away from returning. Dorrance Armstrong on Sunday, though, recorded a sack and a block punt. The last NFL player with a sack and a block punt in the same game was his current teammate, Terrell Basham, back in 2019 when he did it for the New York Jets when he was playing at Baltimore. So a little bit of history there, too.
Yeah, well, that's you digging up those numbers and nuggets like that. I will say he also had 3 quarterback hits in this game. Mm-hmm. So, we talk about Randy Gregory and we talk about the hits and the pressures, and sometimes that turns into sacks. That's the kind of stuff you have to have. You just can't let this thing, you just can't all of a sudden like, oh, good, I had a great game. And then be a no-show against the Chiefs and be a no-show against the Raiders and be a no-show against the Saints. You can't have that. This team can't afford to have you be a no-show. You need to build on these games, and hopefully they will.
Conversely, on the offensive side of the football, a return to form for one reigned Dakota Prescott. He played really good football, gave everyone a heart attack with the short touchdown run that he had, in the third quarter, but nonetheless came out of that unscathed. In fact, the hardest hit that he had, apparently he took from one of his teammates on the sidelines from CeeDee Lamb.
He got him.
Yeah, he did. Because as I was watching the broadcast, like, how in the world did Dak get that shiner on the right side of his face? We come to find out after the game, CeeDee Lamb thought Dak Prescott's helmet was off his face and went to give him, a little helmet tap and tapped him, pretty good in his face. But that was the only thing that went wrong for Dak Prescott on Sunday. 291 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns. What did you like most about his performance in the way that he was able to attack this defense, completing had 7 receivers, at least with a catch in the first half against the Falcons?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. He looked comfortable in the pocket. We talked about it in the pregame or the build-up to this game that the Falcons just don't rush the passer. And that was something, again, their scouts were really, really worried about. And, and you watch how the Cowboys blocked for him up front. It wasn't always, Steele getting help, even though there were tight ends, there were backs, great blitz pickups on the first touchdown by Ezekiel Elliott, with Jones blitzing and boom, him stepping up and the ball gets out. He was protected. He was comfortable. And he was accurate with his throws. It didn't look like he was forcing anything. Guys were open. The routes were good. The finish was good. Where he needed to place the ball, running to his left, the touch to CD over the top, and the corner of the end zone. That just shows you right there. When Dak's on, those are the plays you see. Movement, touch, accuracy, ball downfield. All those things were on display yesterday.
Yeah, the way that he handled the blitz on his second touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb was a thing of beauty. Put just enough air under it to allow CeeDee Lamb to run under it and catch the football there. I thought Dak Prescott bounced back very nicely with his 296 yards passing and 3 total touchdowns. And you mentioned Ezekiel Elliott. Had a couple touchdowns, only had 41 yards receiving. But again, his impact when it comes to blitz pickup and being able to help protect Dak Prescott was huge. You mentioned him blowing up Deion Jones on the first touchdown. I thought that was part of the Cowboys' mentality of punching teams in the mouth and not letting the Falcons dictate to them how things would go in this football game.
Well, Ezekiel Elliott loves to rush for 100 yards. And he loves to help his team win. I guarantee you in the film session today, he will be more proud about that blitz pickup on that particular throw because that allowed Dak Prescott the time to get the ball to the CD on the outside. And that's, to me, that's what you have to have. You have to have that ability to, if you're a back and you're on the field, you've got to sacrifice for your teammates. You've got to sacrifice. And I think all season long, Ezekiel Elliott, now the fumble yesterday that was just a heck of a play. That ball got hammered out of his hand.
Richard Grant made a great play there. Yeah,
Grant was a nice player. And I was talking to those guys again in Atlanta. I'm like, what's the deal? I go, man, the guy just can't get on the field. We're struggling to get him on the field, but hopefully they'll figure it out. But heck of a play by Grant to punch the ball loose, and Zeke knows that. But he'll take a big time blitz pickup block. It helps him get points as opposed to maybe rushing for 100 yards because that means just as much. Those are the kinds of things that you don't see in the box score. That's not part of the 2 touchdowns and the 41 yards and the catches and all that other stuff. Blitz pickup for a back. If you're a complete back and you can stay on the field every single play, that is a huge badge of honor right there.
That gets us to our stars of the game for the Cowboys when they defeated the Falcons 43-3. There's a couple of standout players in this game as we look at how the Cowboys were able to handle their business on Sunday. An important win as we look at the grand scheme of things, which we'll do here in just a little bit. I thought for me, the biggest star in the game, I know, look, the offense is going to get a lot of the headlines with Dak Prescott, the way that he played. We mentioned him earlier. I thought Jordan Lewis played the best game of the season for him. The pass breakups that he wound up getting an interception later on in the game. I thought the way that he was able to take his assignment, I don't know if the Falcons saw something on tape or just felt like, hey, this was a player that we could potentially exploit on the Cowboys defense, but he took it to heart and really played terrific football on Sunday against the Falcons.
Well, I think what happened too, just naturally, he took the best Falcon weapon. He was in coverage with Pitts. It's kind of like when you watch Diggs play and you're like, well, they're going to keep throwing the ball at Diggs. And you're like, well, why? And they're like, because he's carrying their best player. He's carrying the best receiver. But yeah, I have to agree with you, KG. I think Jordan Lewis, the questions I asked in the postgame show, and maybe this will be up for debate and we could get some comments in our section when people watch this video. I think Anthony Brown is playing some really good football right now, too. And Anthony Brown might be your best corner. He might be your best corner. And I brought that up on the broadcast. Yeah, Diggs has the interceptions, but Diggs has given up some plays. He's given up some yards. He's had some penalties. But if you talk about down in, down out, Brown has been outstanding. And you'll say, well, maybe for 1,000, it's like watching Byron Jones play. Byron Jones is going to is in 1,000 snaps is not going to give up any plays. And that's kind of like how Anthony Brown is playing. Even though he had an interception yesterday, Diggs, you're going to get 8 interceptions, but you're going to see some give up on some plays. Who do you want? Do you want Byron Jones? You want the interceptions? That's kind of the balance. And I think that's what you got right now. You got a guy that's a ball hawk in Diggs, and you got Byron Jones type of ability where you're going to play 1,000 plays. You're going to get some balls knocked down. You're going to get an occasional interception. You're going to get a consistent guy throughout. So I give Lewis, you got to give all 3 of those guys really a lot of credit for the way that they were able to play in the secondary. And then also, too, with what you got with Kurtz as well, being around the football and making some tackles.
You were talking about Anthony Brown. He got the interception party started with his 3rd interception of the season. That sets a career high for him. And then, of course, Trayvon Diggs got into the act with his 8th interception, which leads the National Football League. And then Jordan Lewis in the 4th quarter was able to get an interception, capping off a massive day for him in this Cowboys secondary, who had 3 turnovers in the game against the Atlanta Falcons. We talked about Dak Prescott, how good he was. Dorrance Armstrong, can he continue to be this kind of player? Maybe not necessarily the massive game that he had, but affect the quarterback and affect the pocket in a way that he'll need to, especially going up against a couple of offenses in the Chiefs and the Raiders in the next couple of games, where we saw the Chiefs get right against the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be key for them. My last star of the game for me, look, CeeDee Lamb continues to be one of the best receivers on this team. Obviously, I think he's still the number 2 wide receiver. Amari Cooper, to me, is still the number 1. But CeeDee Lamb, he's growing every single game. If he can get that drop problem corrected, that we see on occasion from him, there's a reason why they gave him the number 88. And he proved it again on Sunday with the way that he played. 6 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. The former Oklahoma Sooner had another terrific day. And not to mention Micah Parsons was awesome once again as he continues to affect the quarterback in the way that he did on Sunday.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody that you've mentioned, and I'll tell you what, I'll take it a step further. I think Kellen Moore had a really good game plan coming in. I want to give him a tip of the cap, and I want to give Dan Quinn a tip of the cap. That's not easy going against your former team. I know my personal experience, not that I had a huge, but my experience in the NFL, I was 0-7 against when I was with the Packers, never beat the Cowboys. And then I go to the Cowboys, and then I never beat the Packers. That's just it's an emotional thing, too. There's a lot of people that are very close to Dan Quinn over there. The scouts I was visiting with speak with great fondness of Dan Quinn. They're basically like, listen, we're a bad half away in the Super Bowl from all still being together. And, they're not surprised that Dan Quinn and Witt and an AD at defensive line, and those guys are having success. They're like, listen, those are good football coaches. Those are really good coaches. And I said, listen, the Cowboys have benefited by all 3 of those guys coming, and they've benefited from KZ, and they've benefited from Keanu Neal. You look at those 5 additions for the Cowboys on the defensive side of the ball, they've all been very, very good. And so, a tip of the cap to those guys for able to get a victory against their old team, especially with all the emotions they were probably feeling as the game was going on. I'll say this, though, KG. I think that 2-point play, I said it on Twitter, I think that 2-point play that McCarthy ran was for Dan Quinn and those coaches. Like, okay, you're going to make a mistake. Okay, we're going to – and then – when the Dak Prescott, when he ran in for the touchdown, the scramble he had for the touchdown, I had a scout lean over to me from the Falcons again, go, that's a big FU moment right there for, so McCarthy, he was very, very mindful. I don't know if there's much love lost too, by the way, between Jerry Jones and Arthur Blank, because there were some questions that Arthur Blank raised about that whole thing about Ezekiel Elliott when he was getting suspended and all that. And Arthur Blank was kind of going back and forth with Jerry Jones on that. So maybe McCarthy knew Jerry Jones, and then he knew maybe all these Atlanta guys. He had something in mind, kind of like that FU moment that the that the Atlanta scouts were telling me about.
Bryan Broaddus going next level on us, bringing the Arthur Blank Jerry Jones little issue into. I like it.
I don't think it's as everybody might think it might be. Yeah.
Well, that gets us to the Broaddus Files. An important win for the Cowboys when you look at the grand scheme of things, especially the way that things are playing out in the NFC. The Packers get the win over the Seattle Seahawks, and Aaron Rodgers' return to the Green Bay Packers. But the Arizona Cardinals lost at home to the Carolina Panthers and the returning Cameron Newton. With those results and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing on the road to the Washington football team, if the season were to end today, the Cowboys would be the 3 seed. So you got the Packers, the Cardinals, Cowboys, and Bucks as your top 4 seeds, with the Rams, Saints, and the Panthers there, rounding out the 7 would-be playoff teams. Especially now, Bryan, as we look at this stretch of games, they're going on the road to Kansas City next week, who got right, and they're starting to look like the Chiefs of old. Then they come home on Thanksgiving Day to play the Raiders before going back on the road to take on the New Orleans Saints. Let's just start here. How important was this win in your mind, given the next 3 games of this Cowboys team, arguably their most difficult stretch of the season at this point?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that you had to have this victory because, again, I think best case scenario is always 3-0 the next 3. But realistically, if you're 2-1, you're kind of like, okay, that's, we're in good shape here, and again, you're playing an opponent that's not a common opponent these next 2 days. And, it used to be the NFL would give the Cowboys an advantage and let them play a home game on this Sunday and then turn around and play the Thanksgiving game on that Thursday. So you had that advantage, and the league says, no. We're not going to let you do this anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right about Kansas City, and I'll tell you why I think you're right about Kansas City. I think the AFC West is really up for grabs. And instead of like the Chargers winning games or the Broncos winning games or the Raiders winning games, you never buried Kansas City. You never buried them. You let them hang around. And it's not going to surprise me one bit when Kansas City wins this division. It's just not, and I think that they're going to kind of figure out. Now, I'll say this. The Raiders do not play a lot of cover two. When you're talking about their, with Bradley as their, Gus Bradley as their defensive coordinator, Rod Marinelli, there's a lot of single high going on there, and it seems like that everybody that's played cover two and made Mahomes be a little bit more patient has kind of had to figure those things out. But as you look at this going forward, though, this is going to be a very, very difficult place to play. Kansas City, I was checking the early weather forecast. It looks like it's going to be probably in the low 50s, but sunny, so at least you're not having to.
Which is not bad for this time of year in Kansas City.
Yeah,
I should know. I'm from there.
The area. You know the area. That's your home. And so that this time of year around Thanksgiving, it could start getting, you could get one of those freak storms or something blow through and massive cold and all that. But it looks like it's going to be a very mild day on a grass field. So, hey, Steve Spagnuolo is going to have his hands full. And I know we're going to get into it on Friday and really talk about this as we break them down. But you're going to, and as we get to the Broaddus Files too, talking to people about Tyron Smith, they think they bought him enough time to play these games going forward. So they're hopeful. The word was, I'm hopeful that things with Tyron Smith will be okay for him going forward. We'll see how he practices and stuff like that. But at least maybe it's not like completely ruled out, but hopeful that they bought him enough time to get that ankle right for these next 2 games.
No, that's huge, going up against a Kansas City Chiefs defense that isn't necessarily great, but at the same time, Steve Spagnuolo can dial up some pressure and figure out some different things. You're going to need to be.
You pay for that too.
That's true.
You'll find a way to, and especially if Zeke's in there picking up blitzes, you better be able to pick up on the back end. That's going to be key for those guys for sure.
So fortunately for the Cowboys, come out of this game relatively unscathed. CeeDee Lamb dealt with a little bit of an arm injury, said he's going to be fine, kind of a Charlie horse thing that was nagging him throughout the game. He said that he will be just fine. And Terrence Steele held up better at left tackle on Sunday versus the debacle that was against the Denver Broncos. So things, at least from an injury perspective, look like they came out relatively unscathed, as I mentioned, and more importantly, a little bit more confidence now after getting a bounce-back win against the Atlanta Falcons as they get ready to take on the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's funny, this team has figured out how to get through the games unscathed. It's practice that tends to
Right.
So let's hope this week that when Wednesday and Thursday practice roll, that we don't hear about guys with calf pulls or broken fingers or foot injuries or anything like that. It needs to be a clean week because, again, they're getting through these games without issues. But the practices have been the real nightmare for these teams going forward.
And speaking of that, real quick, Michael Gallup made his return to the lineup. I thought played pretty well considering how much time that he missed. If there was only one complaint that I had from the game, my man had an 84-yard touchdown ready to walk down the field if he's able to catch that football. But other than that, I'm not going to nitpick. When you get a team by 40 points, you handled your business pretty well on that day. So the Cowboys get the 43-3 win over the Atlanta Falcons, reestablish themselves 7-2 right now, currently the 3 seed in the NFC if the playoffs were to start today. They get ready to take on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead, one of the most difficult places to play in all of the National Football League. I can promise you that's probably going to be the highest rated game watched this season in the NFL. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that 325 game between the Chiefs and the Cowboys is going to be pretty watched, if not the most watched game this season. Should be a fun week of preparation. We'll have it all covered for you here on the Boys Collective right here on 105 through the Fan here on YouTube. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. You can find Bryan on Twitter at Bryan Broaddus. This has been the Boys Collective episode number 16. The Cowboys get a 43-3 win over those Dirty Birds from Atlanta as they get ready to take on the Chiefs. Bryan, thank you so much for the time. As always, fun show. Looking forward to our Wednesday show with the news and notes from America's team as the Cowboys begin their preparations for those Chiefs of Kansas City. Looking forward to it. Bryan, thank you so much for the time. As always, appreciate it, man.
KG, take care. See you Wednesday, man.
Appreciate it.